So I've decided to make another video. Now I've only made a couple of three videos before. One was a brief shot of me playing Duke Nukem. One was about Star Wars, and another one was about Brexit, which made some predictions which were totally wrong. But there are times in your life when you feel that you must speak up in some way, when things are happening, and to not speak is, in a sense, an act of siding with those you disagree with by not speaking against them. We live in very strange times. We've had the COVID lockdown. History or events seem to be moving very fast. It seems like an age ago that Australia was in flames. And now we have an outbreak of astonishing rioting and cultural destruction with a complicit media establishment, ruling class, whatever you want to call them, who appear to be completely supportive of something which one would previously have thought was beyond the pale, tearing down public statues. We've had police kneeling before the protesters to show support, and in fact we have to look at the question of what a protester is. So let's start there. In our society, activism has a very positive connotation. It's associated with reform, it's associated with making things better, it's associated with the idea that ordinary people come together and force improvement upon the society at large, and that this has always had a positive effect and therefore should be applauded. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of how true that is, but what we can say is that just being an activist doesn't mean you're doing good things. Just because you're a member of the class of activists is not itself proof that you are good, or your opinions are valid, or the thing you're trying to achieve is worthy. Just because other people in the class of activists or activism have done things which are good or worthy or considered so. The fact that Florence Nightingale's activism founded modern nursing in a sense, doesn't mean that somebody else's activism is worthwhile. Now, we do have a thing where activists this meaning the establishment really, or the people who write the newspapers, don't agree with, don't call those activists. They will call them rioters, thugs. And if it's something associated with what we call the far right, racism, white supremacy, and so on, we will say, oh, we won't call them activists and protesters, we'll call them thugs, rioters, and so on, and just white supremacists, or whatever. So that's the first point. The activists who are currently seeking to rule all of society, they are marching in the streets, they're tearing things down, they're defacing buildings. In America, in particular, they are attacking people, innocent people who found themselves in the wrong place. A man was shot in his car because he drove down the street not knowing what he'd driven into. We've had multiple killings in the BLM areas. So we've had the media being entirely supportive of this. They've glossed over the violence. Now this is of course reminiscent of certain things which have happened in the past. Now the issue at the moment, because these groups, you tend to get waves of activism in various things. It might be people rioting in the streets over global warming one month, and now we've got race, and then it might be feminism next month or something else. Currently it's race, and the attack is on something they call whiteness. Now, a lot of people who are becoming interested in this situation may not understand how this has all developed, which is that from moving from a position of saying, let's all get along as different races, you know, you're black, I'm white, that's fine, you know, let's have a beer. A discipline has developed in academia which is based on something called critical theory. And critical theory works from the principle that everything is a system of oppression, that the whole of society is a system of oppression. What is this system of oppression called? Well, in the race system, it's called whiteness. Now, this sounds like an innocuous word. If you look up the dictionary definition of whiteness, you'll say the character of being white or having a white colour. I, as a white person, have whiteness in the same way that this has transparentness. It is transparent, so it has a characteristic of transparentness. However, whiteness in critical theory, which is the definition being used by the toxic activists, defines a system of oppression. In other words, to be white is part of this system of oppression, in the same way that in feminism, the characteristic of maleness is a system of oppression of women. But we won't go further with that for now. Whiteness, therefore, has to be destroyed because it's a system of oppression. Now, there's a major problem with this, which one might know. Well, there's several major problems with it. One of them is that I will always be white. By my nature, it's part of my nature to have whiteness. So what they've done is to supposedly separate the person's nature from this system of oppression called whiteness. However, if you look, it's also absolutely impossible for me to be separated from my whiteness. I cannot be unwhite. And of course, if one succeeded in that, then what would one be? Would one be black or ethnic minority? No, one would be apparently nothing at all. Now, the second thing to bear in mind, or possibly the third, I've lost count already because I'm old, is that there is no end to the abolition of whiteness. You might say we'll take down statues of people who represent whiteness, which is everybody white from the past. Why stop there? What about the buildings that they built? You'll say they benefited from their whiteness and that gave them the money to build this lovely building, so let's tear that down. What about the art that white people did? They could only afford the art because of their whiteness, and so therefore the art must be destroyed. You end up with a completely nihilist approach which must destroy everything that white people have produced and ever done. Now, I want to stop here and give what amounts to a disclaimer, in that I've always considered myself a liberal, although the word is now so damaged that it's probably best to abandon it. But by liberal, I mean somebody who tries to be easygoing about other people. It's as simple as that. So if somebody's gay, well, I'm not gay, you're gay, that's cool, fine, no problem. I'm not religious, you're religious, that's fine, don't force me to worship your God, but I won't interfere with you going to church. You're a woman, I'm a man, where am I supposed to stand? The key element of liberalism as I grew up with was to be free and easy about things, to be against censorship, to be against authoritarianism, to do your own thing, turn on, tune in, drop out, or just don't do any of those things, but have a nice career and get a wife and family, or a husband and family, or a cat, and so on. This has been completely destroyed now. We live in fervid times where the people who claim to be liberal are bigots and bullies and attack people and cannot bear anyone to be different from themselves. So I just want to go back to this issue of whiteness, because I want you, if you think that the current protests, as they're called, are in a good cause, I want you to simply take the white out of whiteness and replace it with something else. And I'm now going to say something which probably seems quite inflammatory, but is, I think, entirely appropriate because of the seriousness of the situation. If I were to say, and I hasten to add, I don't think this, but if some person were to say, oh, well, I'm not a racist, I'm not against Jews, I'm against Jewness. Jewness is a system of oppression. The Jews run Hollywood, the Jews run the banks, the Jews run business. All Jews are involved in this system of oppression, and even if they don't realise it, they benefit from it in their everyday lives. And this gives them power over us. So we must tear down everything Jewish. We must destroy their symbols. We must destroy their self-identity. We must destroy their places of worship. We must destroy their things that indicate Jewishness, such as names. And we must make them kneel before us as a sign that they are sorry for all that they have done. That is pure bigotry. The activists are nothing but bigots with a justifying narrative. And in fact, that's how bigotry normally works. The Nazis thought they were justified in destroying the Jews because they felt they had proof that international Jewry, the Jews, were a system of oppression which was hurting permanently the German people, the Aryan people. And furthermore, they thought they had proof of it. Instead of whiteness studies, they had race studies departments in universities who did what looked like science, measuring skulls and so on, to prove their ideology, to prove that the Jews were a different and harmful thing. They would say, well, look at all the Jewish capitalists. Of course the Jews are an oppressive force. And this kind of anecdotal evidence would of course be very appealing to somebody who themselves feels perhaps resentful and feels they haven't made it in life, or that they could have done better if it wasn't for that damn Jew. Now, they ended up killing people, millions of people, and they did so confident not that they were being bigots, but that they were redressing the balance. In fact, there's a quote from Himmler somewhere where he gave a talk to the SS, which amounts to, history will revile us, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. Now, it is not an exaggeration to say, where will this stop? If they pull down every statue, is that the end? Do they all go home, satisfied that now they have abolished the evil whiteness they despise? When they have university departments churning out propaganda every day of the week, writing papers that only they read, which they believe prove their case? Of course not. Fanatics do not go away. Fanatics do not say, we've achieved our goals, let's all go and have a picnic now. They just get bolder and stronger and stronger, and eventually terrible things happen.